Okay, so at the end of Loki episode 1, we get a glimpse of a hooded figure. And this hooded figure is explained to us to be a evil version of Loki. Here's the problem. The evil version of Loki that appears at the end of the episode is not Tom Hiddleston. At least I don't believe it is Tom Hiddleston. I think this is one of those situations where the reason why they didn't show us that Loki is because that Loki is being played by a completely different actress. Now there was an actress who is in Loki who they haven't revealed what her role is yet, but I have a feeling her role is basically going to be playing female Loki. Now, where did this Loki come from? We know where our Loki, Loki A, came from. He's the Loki that escaped with the Tesseract at the end of, well, after the Avengers failed to acquire it from Avengers Tower during Avengers Endgame. This Loki doesn't come from that. I don't even think this Loki encountered the Avengers in any way, shape, or form. I want to say this is a Loki that escaped the TVA and the Time Masters destroying and pruning all of the different timelines. This Loki comes from a time before the Time Masters, where there was a multiverse and there was multiple different branching paths. This Loki may be a Loki that took part in the multiversal war that the TVA claims the Time Masters came in and they stopped. What does that mean? This both leads into Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. I feel as though everything is kind of sort of leading into Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. Like WandaVision's leading. The only thing that didn't lead into it was Falcon and Winter Soldier. But everything, I feel like Loki and WandaVision are both leading directly towards a head with Multiverse of Madness. Because the TVA is saying we're pruning the branches to make sure that this one timeline is continuing through completely. But if there's only one timeline and you're clipping every single branch, that means that the timeline never branches and there's no multiverse. There's just one universe. Now, the destruction of the TVA could lead to multiple multiverses. But what if this Loki comes from a time when there was a multiverse, where there were multiple branching paths, where this is a Loki that back during its time in the Netherlands or in Norway visiting with Odin, he chose to remain a female like he does in Norse mythology, which is actually a thing in Norse mythology. Loki visits like this Norway town and meets this dude and falls in love with the dude, chooses to stay as a female for like 2-3 years, and they end up having like a bunch of kids. The kids become these like half human, half god monsters that rule over the forest and kill people. Norse mythology is wild. There's also like a story where Loki gets tricked and turned into a horse, and then Odin's stable horse sleeps with Loki, and then Loki gives birth to a horse, and then that horse ends up being the steed that it's wild. This is all I'm saying. But this Loki could definitely come from a time where everything was just wild, where everything was different. Which why it is that this Loki is just out there killing these TVA agents, which is something that I don't think a lot of people are picking up on. Yes, this evil, because we're dubbing it evil, but Loki is like the Tesseract. There are multiple different facets to his character. He's not actually evil. We see that in this episode in regards to our Loki. He's never evil. All he wanted to do was be loved. And it literally took him there sitting down, watching his entire timeline, where everyone in his life is telling him, hey, we love you, for him to be like, wow, I really have been a dick. Now this Loki could come from a timeline before where things for her, or him, if it's not actually female Loki, are completely different, where he or she didn't go to war with the Avengers, and she had a good relationship with her Thor, and she was loved by Odin and Freya. Technically, if Loki was a female in that universe, that kind of solves the whole succession crisis between Loki and Thor. They can just get married and combine two realms. And then that Loki just loses everything. Like, this would be the version of Loki that Loki always wanted to be. This Loki grew up with love. This Loki grew up understanding. This Loki grew up assured from its peers like Odin and Thor and Freya that they were loved and they were admired and they were appreciated. This Loki lived a life that our Loki never really got to live because he didn't, like, he had blinders on the entire time. He couldn't see it. And then the TVA and the Time Masters go, we're pruning everything. Everyone is going down a set path. This fantastic life that you have, you don't deserve it because we don't believe that that's the initial timeline. Snip. You don't get your good Thor. Snip. You don't get your good dad Odin. Snip. You don't get your good mom Freya. Snip. And the reason why at the end of the episode this Loki is collecting the TVA's weapon which destroys branch realities is probably because this Loki is planning on using that weapon to destroy the TVA. I feel as though this episode, at least episode 1, drops a lot of hints. For instance, the lingering shot with Mobius and Loki looking at the TVA's like infinite city. That city's definitely going to be destroyed. The explanation of the time stream war between the different multiverses and different timelines. Because the TVA is definitely going to be destroyed. The collection of the TVA's weapon, and it seems like it's looking from all of the different TVAs that they've been starring. Definitely going to come into play to destroy the TVA to get revenge. Now, it's not to whether or not Loki actually wants to destroy this version of himself, or if this version of Loki is going to end up being the version of Loki that continues on into the future. But yeah, that's Evil Loki, kind of sort of explained. In my opinion, I think Evil Loki is probably going to be female Loki. I could be wrong, but then we're also going to get a bunch of other Loki variants that our Loki's going to run into, like a version of Loki who actually conquered the world in Avengers 1. So this should be super interesting. I can't wait to see what Evil Loki is like. I think Evil Loki is going to be super dope. I keep saying Evil Loki. I don't think it's going to be actual Evil Loki, but I can't wait to see what this Loki, who's the big bad, is going to end up being like. But that's it. Peace.